guys? I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Whether y'all are watching this in the morning, in the afternoon, or in the evening, I'm glad you're all here. Today, I'm not going to hate on the bug out. I'm a big fan of the bug out. I'm just going to point out some knives in my collection that are both more expensive, less expensive, made here, not made here, and they're not bug out clones, so to speak, or bug out copies. To me, they're just knives that kind of occupy that same space, that same size, that same approximate weight, and make for what I consider in an urban EDC environment, that is in the city where I am, to be a good EDC knife, right? Everybody's EDC is different. Mine's kind of more in the city, cutting packages and tape and some paracord and stuff like that. So I like a bug out shape, sized type knife. Kind of works for me, right? Before I get into this, I just want to make sure you guys know I'm not a bug out hater. This is not a bug out hater video. The thumbnail was a little, no to bug out, and that's not what it meant. It was hopefully to get y'all in here so I could say thanks for stopping by. I hope you watch this video, find it somehow entertaining, informative, worth your effort. And if you would, and you're so inclined, if you'd hit that subscribe button and that bell notification icon, I would be super stoked. It would really help me out. And most importantly, I want to say thank you to all the channel members. You guys and gals are the best. Thank each and every one of you. So without further ado, I am going to pull some knives out of my collection that are kind of like the bug out. This bug out started out as a Blade HQ exclusive many years ago, a couple years ago. It's in 20 CV and it had G10 scales. I added about 120 bucks to it with these scales. These are Mettenboss scales, and I really dig them. They're worth every bit of that to me. So in today's market, I'm guessing this knife would be somewhere around $400 value knife if it was new, right? So the only reason I say that is, like I said, when I point out some knives that I carry that are comparable in the terms of pocket space, what they're able to accomplish in terms of cutting tasks and the like, we'll just use that kind of as the benchmark, right? And we'll start off with the easiest one to point out, in my opinion, and the best value alternative, in my opinion, and this is the Hogue Deka. Now, my Decas are V1s, and I was lucky enough to send these guys out to Original Goat, and they were able to template these Gen 1 scales, and they were able to hook me up with these aluminum scales that are just awesome. The Gen 1 has now been, I guess, graduated to a Gen 2. A little bit's changed. This is 20 CV. I'm getting Magna Cut now. But just an absolutely fantastic knife. These knives in G10 are going to run you, if I'm not mistaken, right around 140 bucks. A set of scales like this will probably be 99 bucks. So for 20 CV and 20 CV, you're well over $100 less expensive. And the Hogue Deka also comes in a Wharncliffe blade. So these two knives, where the bug out only comes in the one blade shape, this gives you a drop point, clip point style blade, and or what I consider a wicked Wharncliffe. This is also a Gen 1, and I really like the Deka. The Deka is a light knife. It occupies about the same pocket real estate. It cuts about the same, has about very similar blade geometry. Needless to say, they are very different, but they hold a lot of similarities, right? I love the Decas. I'm a big fan. The Wharncliffe is kind of my premium Deka. This is kind of my fave. Fantastic EDC knife. I know we always usually cut paper, but just an absolute screamer. The Hogue Deka is definitely a worthy alternative, right? It's one that I look at as a great knife, made in the USA by Hogue, and it's a winner. And then we've got this knife, which I found at North River Outdoors, a knife company I wasn't aware existed until I picked up ProTech from them. When I picked up that ProTech, they did a super solid customer service, what I would consider more than a solid for me. So I bought more knives from them. That's kind of how I look at it. And the knife that I was able to find was this Asher updated Spiro, of which I've got the titanium OG Spiro frame lock in S35VN. This is a liner lock in 20CV. A little bit newer model, but in terms of a bug out replacement or alternative, I should say, because no need to replace a bug out, I'm a huge fan in the Spiro. I love the detent in both the frame lock and in this liner lock. I love the fact that it's got a deployment hole. This one's 20CV like this. This knife in titanium, I want to say was about $115, $120. This knife was like $110 in 20CV. Fantastic value. Not made in America, but wherever it is made, it's made very well. I've heard it's done by Petrified Fish, but I don't know if they were originally done by Petrified Fish. And I've not heard that from Asher Knives. I've just heard that kind of gossipy, I guess I should say. But anyway, this is the Asher Spiro. It's a very economical win. It's a very economical EDC light package that takes up very little pocket real estate, and it's fantastic for opening packages, cutting tape, getting into whatever you need to get into. If you got a feather stick, a little bit of wood to get a fire started, you're going to be able to do that with any of these knives, right? Because they're well made. They're not super, super thick, but they're not going to fall apart on you either, right? They're going to be thick enough to cut wood, even though most of what I'm coming into contact with in my urban EDC is more papery, cardboardy, right? So as we move on, I wanted to bring out a little bit nicer alternative, but again, this knife is going to run like this from Hinderer, about $425. This is a 3-inch XM18 with a micarta scale. The scale added about $100 to it. So you say this knife might be a little bit more expensive than the bug out in the dress pattern that we have here with 20CV and the titanium. If you move it in today's market, Hinderer hadn't really raised their prices from what I've been able to tell. Benchmade has been going up for reasons I'm sure they've had to, I don't know, and make those decisions, but I'm just looking at today's prices. This is a Skinner blade, probably one of my favorite blade shapes from Rick Hinderer, and anybody who says Hinderers aren't sharp needs to try an XM18 Skinner. This little guy is also in 20CV, like the bug out, like the Spiro, like the my Gen 1 Hogues, but it's a great little knife. Again, when you look at the thickness profile, yes, it's a Hinderer, but it's no thicker than our bug out. When we look at our blade stock, yeah, we're a little thicker there. But again, just a great little alternative. It does have a flipper tab if you prefer that. It's got thumb studs if you prefer that, right? So a very, I think, great contender for the bug out. USA made very well. And Hinderer does have a lot of different blade styles. I've also got a Warncliffe in a 3-inch, but there are other choices there as well, right? So we'll continue looking on down the line. And another knife that I think is understated, elegant, and an absolute win from my favorite USA knife company, as I double miss reverse flick that. It's my TRM Neutron. And this knife is one of my faves. I put the scales on it because in this configuration, I want to say this knife comes in somewhere around 250, 60, 70 bucks. I'm not exactly sure. Again, I haven't bought one in a while, and I bought so many knives that I actually forget. But it's somewhere under 300 bucks, right? And then that's with G10 or micarta scales. I put these on just to show you how easy they are to replace. because I've got another, I want to say 130 to 150 in titanium scales from TRM, which bring it more into line with what we're looking at with our bug out. So this knife is going to come in right around, if not a little bit higher than that $400 mark on the bug out. I think the TRM Neutron is a far superior knife. I think it's done very, very well. Titanium liners, titanium clip, 20 CV blade steel that is extremely, extremely thin. It's also very well heat treated. The geometry on the blades are fantastic. The liners are done very well. As you can see there, the knife is just a little laser beam dart. And then you can pair it with some titanium scales to make it like our bug out. And you've got just a fantastic, super slicey gentleman's folder that I like. I carry quite a bit. I've also got several nerds, which are the smaller 5th pocket size TRM knives. And then I've also got the Atom, which is the larger version of this knife with a 3.5-inch blade, which again is large. You know, that's a full-size knife. There are times I like to carry it because, again, like this knife, it is very easy on the pocket because it is so thin and it's so ergonomical. Very, very easy to swap scales. The titanium does add a little bit of weight, but to me, it doesn't add enough weight to where I would rather have my Carta or G10. I had a ton of scales for this knife. I used to switch them out quite often. I donated those to a buddy of mine who had a couple of these knives. Titanium's the way to go. And this little guy is very, very reminiscent of our bug out in size, in carry profile, in overall weight. A little bit shorter. But to me, when I looked at it next to the Atom's a good bit longer. I think they're about the same size. You know, if I put that butt to butt, it comes within 1/2 inch. So the TRM's Atom, my favorite USA knife manufacturer for a lot of different reasons. One of them is the fact that they're very community focused and very generous, very charitable. And I just have witnessed some behind the scenes acts of kindness, and they're a fantastic company to work with. I've purchased every single TRM I have, and I've done so with pride and stoked to do it because I love their knives, right? So the TRM Neutron is going to be a good comparison to your bug out. You can get in for well under the $400 if you don't have the titanium scales. They've got fantastic micarta, G10. Take a look at their site. It's in my link tree. I'll make sure it is. I don't have a link with them, but I definitely do support them because I love their knives. And this is the Neutron. So as we move on, we come to another knife that's kind of an unlikely, I guess you would say, entrant to this little game of let's look at the bug out and knives that kind of occupy that same pocket space. And this is the Civ Vision FG. So it's a little bit longer than the bug out. But the reason that I wanted to point it out is that's the Civivi version of the Vision. It is in Nitro V. It's in G10. I added a $12 titanium clip. It has got the snake slot. It has got really great blade geometry. Makes for a fantastic EDC platform for me. Again, we're talking about my urban city dwelling kind of life, right? And this knife's under $100. I think it's around 79 to 82 bucks. We has their version, which is in 20 CV and titanium, has the same snake slot. I actually like a lot of things about the Civivi. The thumb studs really is the only thing. I think the thumb studs give it fantastic detent or more leverage. But this knife here, you can pick up in 20 CV from Wii for about $250, $260. This one you can pick up, like I said, for about 80 bucks. So a great alternative in pocket space, in functionality, and what it's set up to do, right? Which is cut through your package. This weed just absolutely glides. The Civivi does too. Let's grab it. They're just shredders, right? I think the blade is designed perfectly for EDC, and when you look at the size and the profile and what kind of space it takes up, we learned that they are kind of occupying that same space. So as we move on, we come to the Tactile Turn Rockwall. Different knife altogether. However, it is, in my opinion, a similar style knife in terms of takes up very little space in the pocket, has thumb studs, quality materials. This one happens to be Magna Cut and titanium. I want to say these sell for $2.99. This is just the plain Jane. I say plain Jane. It's titanium, but it doesn't have extra Zerk collars. It doesn't have some of the extra appointments that can drive the price of these upwards of $300. This one was $2.99. I think it's a great alternative, not a replacement, but just a great carry alternative in terms of getting things done in a city, in an urban environment. Great little package. I think the Rockwall is an absolute little banger. It reminds me a lot of the Quiet Carry Waypoint, which this one happens to be in G10 and Vanex with a hollow grind. Both of these little knives are fantastic. Small city EDC knives that kind of operate in that same space, in that same profile as our Bugout. Same width, same blade stock, very, very similar. Both great knives, and I could recommend either one of these. This guy comes in, if I'm not mistaken, right around 200, maybe 300 in this configuration. You can check the Quiet Carry website. This is the G10 version again, and then this one comes in at right around, I think, $199, maybe $299. Again, I'd have to check the website on both of these. But again, we talk about the Bugout. It's going to come in, clock in 20 CV, right around at least 200 before you add scales. So keep that in mind by today's prices. So two really good knives that I think are very similar, but also different enough to occupy separate slots in my collection. But moving on, we come to kind of the last three are kind of unique knives, right? I'm going to start with another knife from Quiet Carry, and this is the Quiet Carry Drift. This has rapidly become one of my favorite medium size, to quote Christine at Women's Carry Knives, small medium knives. It's got a fantastic forward finger choil. It's in Vanex steel. This guy came in as it sits with titanium on washers like the Bugout for $308. So I have no question in my brain that this knife with titanium handles, even if you didn't go with Met and Boss, you're going to be looking at the same ballpark. This has a really tall, flat ground blade that is super, super slicey. Does a great job for those EDC tasks that we were talking about. I also would have no problem putting this to work around a fire at a campsite, trying to get a feather stick broken out. Yeah, just a great, great knife. And again, it occupies, in my mind, that same pocket space, that same weight profile, that same thinness as our Benchmade Bugout. So this is a knife that came into my collection kind of late, but it's a knife that I'm a huge fan of, and that is the Quiet Carry Drift, a real winner. And we will move on from there, and we will come to a knife that is probably one of the best values in the bunch. This is, of course, the Devo Mash 2.5. I'm a huge fan of some of Devo's knives. Not all of them, but some of them. The Mash is probably my number one. It is a city, and it used to be the Growler. I'll tell you that the Growler was my number one for a long time, till the 2.5 Mash came out. And I think what that made me do is it got me this lighter carbon fiber, and it got me to really appreciate it so much that I bought several of them. I think I have 3. Yeah, I've definitely got 3 because I've made 2. I've made my Mash version 2, merged it with the 2.5 and came out with a full blackout because I bought a black hardware kit when the 2.5 came out, and they're interchangeable. Yeah, and this is a great knife. It came in, I want to say about 120 bucks, maybe less than that. I could be wrong, guys. I don't remember. But this is in, what is this one? 154 cm. Yeah, this is 154 cm. The version 2 was in 14C. Fantastic EDC knife. Takes up, again, the same space as a Benchmade Bugout. And to me, in every single area, is far superior. I'm just a big fan of liner locks, frame locks, not a big fan of axis locks, and I look for a knife that's going to do kind of the same thing that my Bugout reliably also will do. So coming in there, kind of screeching in, is the Devo Mash 2.5. And then the last knife we'll talk about tonight is the Dico Knives Shark Cub. So the Shark Cub is a smaller, more recent Dico knife. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that these knives are $199. So the Dico, if you like a very detentless lock, kind of like the Bugout, this is your guy. This is your girl right here. This is your boy Blue. I'm a huge fan of this knife. They've got a sheep's foot or shark's foot. They've got the clip point, and then they've got this, which is the slicer blade. And this is the one that I think, it's not a Bugout killer because we're not here to kill the Bugout, but it's definitely a replacement. It's got about 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more, less blade, but it makes up for that in finesse and in sliciness. This blade and this aluminum handled knife with the shark lock, which I love. I kidded it about its detent, but I know that knives that are spring actuated don't have a lot of detent. I don't really expect that. But this is an absolute slicer, and I'm hitting the choil each time. But this guy is also 20 CV, very slicey. He's going to be a little bit more robust than the Bugout, but not by a lot, right? So you've got some great alternatives, both in the similarly priced price point. You've got some that are going to be considerably less expensive, like our Vision by Civivi, or our Asher, or our Devo Mash 2.5. And then we've got some much more expensive, or a little bit more expensive alternatives in our Hinderer, our TRM. It's going to be pretty close when you outfit them with the same type of accompaniments, if you say. And then you've got several choices from Quiet Carry and Tactile Knife Company, and this is $2.99 when I come to think about it. I was just giving it a little too much, or giving it a little too much value. At $1.99 is the Bexar, the slip joint. This one's $2.99, but still, you're going to be looking at around $2.99 for a 20 CV Bugout, in my humble opinion, and that's just what that is a humble opinion. And then again, if you want to be right in that same range or that same ballpark, don't overlook the Hogue line, the Hogue Deka line. You've got choices there, options over obligations, guys. The Bugout's a great knife. This is by no means let's shit on the Bugout video. It's just like, let's look at some other knives that are around that same pocket space, occupy that same brain space. Oh no! I pushed my little Joe Isabella thing out of there. Be up, everybody. I appreciate y'all taking the time to watch the video. If you've made it this far, thank you guys more than you know. I can only ask you to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, and I ask you that because it would really help me out. However, I'm glad you're here. I appreciate you. Please, if you would, look out for the guy or gal to your left. Look out for the guy or gal to your right. Look out for each other. Go forward with love in your heart. And please, be up and choose debate, not hate. I love you all. Peace.